Well, all of a sudden, before you know it, and just like that, spring turns into summer. It is hot. It's already in the 90s. The mornings and evenings are still cool, but during the day, it is really, really, well, let's just say it's steamy. It's humid and it's hot. My boys, when they flew in from Denver, the pilot on I think it was Southwest Airlines, said, "Well, welcome to Oklahoma City, where it's 1,000 degrees and the humidity is 100%." And that pretty much describes summer in Oklahoma. So no matter where you are ringing in the summer, you definitely want to do some things to prep for it. And here are 5 things that I think we all should have on our list to get ready for summer. So what do you say, Stuart?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Now this is my motivation for the next tip. I've been working in my office a lot, working on a deadline that I have. And I wanted to do a couple of things. I wanted to kind of summarize the room, which I did by adding some of these linen curtains. You'll notice that they don't go all the way down to the floor because I wanted them to give the room almost kind of a porch feel, so that when I was looking outside at the kiddos or whatever, I would feel almost as if I were outside. And between the bamboo shades and these light linen curtains, which I can close if I so choose, it really does give it a porch vibe. Now, what it doesn't block is my dirty windows. So that reminds me that it is summer and it's time for me to get the burb poop, all of the splatters from all the thunderstorms that we have had recently. I think it's finally, those are going to start to dissipate a little bit, and now's the perfect time. And so I'll show you what I use to get my windows clean, at least from the outside. It was a horror the other day when I looked out the window, and you could kind of see the mess where I removed it. There was the biggest blotch of bird poop I have ever seen. Yeah, and I just wondered how it could get there and hit that trajectory. You can see down there. So anyhow, I digress. I really need to clean these windows. I love the way these dried allium seed heads look in front of these linen-y curtains. I think it gives it a real summery vibe. The reason I don't leave them standing in my garden outside for the birds or even for any of my garden visitors or myself to enjoy is because they just will begin to kind of get destroyed in short order by the heat, by the high winds, by a lot of the thunderstorms that we've been having. And I really want them to maintain their form and kind of their interesting integrity. And so I cut them before they are completely deheaded, if you will. I love the shadows that they make, and this gives this room kind of a summery vibe. Now, speaking of filthy windows, the windows in my bedroom are also they're really, really spotted, and it's kind of driving me a little bit crazy. So that's definitely on my weekend list to do. And while I was pointing those out, Stuart said, "Oh, wow, you changed your bedding." And yes, I did. I changed my bedding to the summer version. This is a little bit lighter. It looks just a little bit airier, I think, for summer. And as I was talking to my friend Sammy, whose home you saw yesterday, we talked about the fact that when you live in a smaller home and a smaller template, to really keep yourself interested, to kind of keep things seemingly more vibrant and more energetic in your home, I think it's important to change out some of your accessories a little bit more frequently. Now that's just me, but I did. This is from Williams-Sonoma. I have been watching it forever, and as soon as it went on sale, I decided, oh, this shall be mine. I will try to put a link below. I'm not sure if it's even still available. So it just kind of helps me switch it up and kind of get the right attitude going into summer. Now, believe me, I am loving all of this rainfall we've been getting and these morning and afternoon thunderstorms. This is May in Oklahoma after all. But one thing it does, actually 2 things, are things that I want to address as I get ready for summer. And number 1, as I pointed out to you inside and that is all of that splashing, all of that wind, all of that rain really dirties up my windows very, very quickly, especially here on this east side. So to make the work easy on myself, I use, and this is not a sponsored post by you guys, but I've used this for years at the other house and here, and this is just, you hose attach this spray. It's Windex, it will not hurt your plants, and it just makes it a little bit easier to get your windows clean. I just ordered some, in fact I ordered 2 bottles for streak-free shine, so it makes it very, very easy, especially on the upper windows, to get off the bird poop, the streaks, any kind of dusty residue that has blown and attached itself to my windows. So I'm going to be doing this. Now, secondly, the other thing that it does is, because we've gotten a lot of rainfall, what that does is really leach all of the nutrients out of the soil very, very quickly, especially my container gardens. And because of that, I want to make sure that at this point in time, I can back off later when it gets hotter and when the rains quit. But right now I want to make sure that while these plants are in their active growth state, in their active bloom state, that I give them the food that they need to continue generating their blooms. So let's go over and I'll show you some of the fertilizer that I like to use in my landscape, in my container plantings, and just in my garden overall. Well, now let's head to the front porch where I have some of my supplies at the ready to describe to you and show you what is one of probably the most frequently asked questions that you guys have addressed to me that I have not answered, and that is, how do I fertilize? Now, if you have seen me watering, you often see that I do have the Miracle-Gro hose attachment sprayer at the end of my hose. Now, why? Because I've told you that I'm not an absolutist about being an organic gardener and fertilizing organically. I do the best I can. And what I have found is I am fine and I am content with using for my potted plants, which eat voraciously and need to be fertilized with great frequency in the summer. I'm okay with my pots and my container plantings, or at least my ornamental container plantings, my window boxes, my urns. I'm okay using Miracle-Gro for them. And it would be helpful if I would put my farmer sleeves on, not upside down. That might make them work a little bit better. And by the way, you guys, these are great. I am really trying to protect my arms and my hands from sun damage, and so these are wonderful. I actually keep them in my mailbox. My mailman does not seem to mind. I asked him, and that way I can put them on when I come out the door. I'm getting a pair also for my friend Jen up at Bricks, because she really needs to protect her arms as well. Works better if you've got on a long sleeve shirt so that hopefully I won't get some kind of weird farmer's tan. But I have changed this subject. So in my urns, in my window box, I do use just regular Miracle-Gro in the hose end sprayer. Now, when I am watering and fertilizing simultaneously with a liquid concentrate, the flowers, the blooming flowers and the shrubs in my garden beds, then I do use something organic, and I use it in one of these hose end sprayers. And basically it has a dialing feature, and you just dial whatever ingredients the measurements for whatever ingredients you are putting inside. So if I am using, for example, Espoma Bloom to get more blooms out of my flowering shrubs, my annuals and my perennials, then I just look at the package directions and I dial accordingly at the top of my sprayer. Likewise, if I am just wanting to spray my turf, spray a just general balanced fertilizer, I also use this hose end sprayer, and this is Plant and Turf booster. I have used it before. Someone sent it to me to try. It's organic. I use it. I also use Espoma Grow. Now that is if I am wanting to really get a fast acting response from a liquid concentrate. At the beginning of the season, and when I first installed my flower beds and the perennial garden in the front, I used a granular. So I used probably an Espoma granular. On the turf, you have heard me talk about Milorganite, and it is also organic, and I use Milorganite on the turf. But when you are just spraying your flower beds, my raised bed vegetable gardens, then I'll use something like Espoma Grow that's organic. And again, it makes it easy if you use one of these hose-in sprayers. And I will definitely put a link to these below. I will also put a link to the farmer sleeves and just to my sunglasses too, because I know you guys will ask. So let's take a break here and then we'll move on to the next thing. Now that we've eaten, I've actually been cooking a little bit more, and since my son Johnny came home yesterday, I actually got up and cooked breakfast. One of my favorite go-to recipes out of the Stirrups catalog from the Enid, I believe it was Chamber of Commerce, and it is called the Panhandle Casserole. We've eaten it 1,000 times. It's a family favorite around here. And Stuart, let's just show a few stills of what we had. We ate out here on the social patio, and it was delish. So now that we have been fortified with breakfast, something else that we're going to want to pay attention to is being ever watchful for any kinds of insects, pests, and fungal diseases in the garden. So one thing I have noticed, the roly-polies are everywhere. And while, as I've said before, they're the cleanup crew of the garden, nevertheless, they can get a little bit overly aggressive, and they not only clean up foliage that is decaying and dying back, but they will go straight for a tender root system too. In that case, anything that is munching, things like grasshoppers, not slugs and snails, but let's say other things where you're not really sure what is munching on them. My go-to for that, I've showed you this before, is Captain Jack's dead bug. So that is, I guess, one of the things I think you really need to be watching for, one of the 5 things. Make sure that you are ever attentive to pests in your garden. If you don't want to have some kind of dust, some kind of, something that will kind of detract from the beauty of your garden, then you can use an insecticidal soap and an insecticidal spray. You can use neem oil. Just make sure you do it in the cool of the morning, not in the heat of the day. I wouldn't be doing it right now. You want to do it when there is not direct sun on the foliage, and you may need to do it repeatedly. Recently, I've heard people say, well, I tried neem oil on this or that, but it just didn't work. And I said, well, were you really persistent about it? Did you spray at the recommended intervals? Because sometimes it takes more than one spray to make sure that you get it at just the right life stage, so that the earlier stages don't go ahead and mature, and then you've still got a problem. So keep an eye on that. And to the extent possible, my garden notwithstanding, if you give your plants pretty good air circulation and room to grow, then definitely that will help mitigate some of those problems. Let's move on to something else. Well, another thing that we really want to be on the watch for to make our summer more pleasant and easier, and that is looking for weeds early on before they get to be big, before they begin to spread, and most importantly, before they set seed. So to do that, we need to do some weed identification, and our weed in the spotlight today is this spotted spurge. You guys are probably familiar with it. It grows prostrate. It kind of grows like this in kind of a wagon wheel fashion from the center. It sometimes will have red stems, sometimes a red spot in the center of the leaf itself, and it does produce kind of a milky sap. So if you find that you are allergic to it or whatever, best use garden gloves. Now, one thing that I try to do is get this early on, because it's not easy to pick with your hands, even after a rain, because it does tend to grow in such a flat profile. So I try to address these as soon as I see them. And I find it helpful to have a little tool for this because I want to eradicate it as best I can. Sometimes it can put out a tap root. Now the other thing about it is that it likes to really grow in compact soil, i.e. clay soil, which is definitely what I have. The other thing it likes to do is grow in cracks and crevices. So it's a candidate to grow in between my bricks, in between the cracks in concrete. You can see right here I've got some of it growing in between these bricks, and I want to get it out, loosen it up a little bit, and then you can see that even at a young age it has a pretty deep root system.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
Yeah, can you see that now? Okay, so I want to eradicate this as much and as early as I can. While I'm down here, I will remove any other small weeds and anything that's growing where you don't want it, even if it's a perennial that has gone to seed, is still a weed. So I'm going to removing those. So be on the lookout for spotted spurge in your garden and address it as soon as possible. If you have a hard time getting it out from in between the cracks and crevices of your sidewalk, of your patio, whatever, like right here, I've got some more right here. I could also come out here just with a kettle of boiling water and pour that boiling water on here.
I always like that method.
Yes, and it would take care of it in short order. Now, most of us across the country, maybe not all, but most of us, and definitely here in Zone 7B, we have already crossed the threshold of our last frost date. So it is safe, beyond safe, for us to put out our annual color right now. And in fact, you want to do it pretty soon because as it gets hotter, it'll have the seasonal color that you put out in the way of annuals will have a harder time getting established. So you want to get on that as soon as possible. So I am really pleased with the composition of my window box. I continue to deadhead constantly. One of the things you want to have on your list. I do this every morning. I find it really a pleasant thing to do because I know that these blooms then are going to keep pumping out, not only because I'm deadheading it, but because, why? I fertilized it. Now, in addition to the bubblegum petunias that are in here and the salvia and some lantana and some of this dusty miller, what else do I have in here? A plant that is new to me. Not necessarily overall, because I'm very familiar with verbena, but this variety, Verbena rigida, or vervain, as it was titled, and that might be a European expression or maybe what it's called in other locales, but I found this at Bricks. I absolutely love it, and it might be able to perennialize a little bit because it is cold hardy down to zone 8. So I'm going to guess that pockets of this will probably perennialize in my garden. This is one plant that I definitely keep pinching back because the more I pinch it back, the fuller it becomes. I've also found that this variety is a lot less temperamental than the other purple verbena that has more of a ferny leaf. This is tough, it's got kind of hairy, rough leaves, and it just performs better in our torrid heat. And if I keep it deadheaded, it too will continue to pump out these flowers. Now it can grow in kind of a bushy state, but if I let some of the tendrils get long, it will cascade over the side. So here is really a wonderful, let's call it a tender perennial that's in my plant spotlight for today. You can see I have planted it really robustly, not only in the window box, but also here in this urn, and notice that I've got it facing straight south. It gets direct south sun, so it can really handle the heat. So I've got it cascading over this urn along with the pentas and the calibrachoa. I've got some on this side. I also have quite a bit of it in my basket in front, where it looks grand, I think, not only with the chartreuse foliage of this golden fever view. It would also look great if you wanted to use like a sweet potato vine, or if you wanted to use kind of a golden Joseph's coat. It looks great with that. But it also looks great, I think, with these pink colors that I've got that are repeated throughout all of my pots and throughout the garden. And that is, I've got some New Guinea impatiens in here, or sun patiens, and I've also got some pentas. Now, pentas are my annual in the spotlight. Why? Because they can really handle the heat. They bloom great with deadheading all summer long. They're a great pollinator, comes in a wide variety of different colors. I've got pink and white up front, kind of a lavender rose pink. I've also got it in red in the back. So it really, really is very, very, it's a great multitasker. It can grow in a number of different ways, and I really like to plant it in combination with other things that give it a color echo. So there you go. Here I've got some of this pink penta, and I've got some of this, I believe this was called, what was this? Lemonade lantana?
It looks like lemonade.
Like lemonade, maybe pink lemonade. But you'll notice that I've planted it in drifts, which with the heat now will only get larger and larger with the companion plants of scabiosa and this wonderful lantana. This drift continues up the sidewalk on both sides. Let me show you this side as well. It's over here. It also is in front of the grid of the upper terrace. So this will be framed in not only this pink penta, but also I am hoping in butterflies that extend all the way up the walkway and then end up in these wonderful magical planters and in the window box. That's a great design tip for having cohesion and harmony and continuity in your plantings. So there you go. There are 3 plants in my spotlight, one a weed, one a tender perennial, and one an annual. Let's move on to something else. Well, I am so happy with the way my seeding troughs have worked out. Case in point, and I don't know, Stuart, I think the camera will be able to capture them. But see all of those tiny little seedlings in there?
They can see them, yeah.
Okay, those are foxglove seedlings from foxglove seed that I sprinkled 3 or 4 days ago. And they just germinate very, very quickly in this receptive soil. You can see some there. I will let them continue to grow larger, bigger, at which point obviously I'm going to have to separate them, and I'll plant them in the garden beds because obviously their scale will be too big for this pot with its topiary. I did the same thing over here. But in here, I did boxwood basil and purple dome basil. And the purple dome basil and some of this boxwood basil, I am already starting to prick out the larger specimens and planting them where I want them to grow. Now, I talked about how to care for foxglove, how to get it established, how to maintain it, with the exception of telling you what I do with the plants after the seed has dried on the stems. And let me show you that now. So I've got a tray here. This makes the work so much easier, I've discovered, especially a tray with a lip. And what I do is I allow some of these dried seed heads from the foxglove, I allow them to dry and just drop in place. And you may say, oh, Linda, that's going to be so densely planted. That seed is so fine, it's going to go everywhere. Well, I have found that it's really hard to get foxglove established in my garden, probably because of its heavy clay content. I don't know why. So here's what I do. I take the stem. It's not going to rebloom, and look at the foliage. The foliage is already looking tattered, and I have found that to be the case not only in my own garden, but anecdotally when I read other gardening books, they express the same thing. So then I just take those seed heads, put them in my tray, where they will dry. The seed will fall into the bevel of the tray itself. and then I can package it up. The other thing is, if some of those little buds have not dried completely, like here, what I have found, like right there, okay, what I have found, if I clip those off and I put them in the tray to mature further, then those too will dry.
It's the longest one.
Yeah, this is really the longest one. Now, I've got these plants here, but they look like heck, and I don't want them to really distract from the beauty of the other things, particularly the hydrangeas and such that are growing in position nearby. So what do? I just pull up the entire plant. Easy to do after we've had a lot of rain. That will then give this salvia nearby the sunlight it needs, the lack of competition, and the space to grow up in its stead. Likewise, I'm going to go ahead and pull these out. These aren't quite so buggy, but nevertheless, they're not going to bloom again. It will give room for me then, because I try to plant seed on a number of different levels, as I told you. Let the seed drop, save some seed to plant at other times of year, and also in the fall. And I can kind of sprinkle some seed in here, do any weeding I need to do in this area. And it will give all of the things in this vicinity the room to grow and better air circulation. So I'm going to be doing that with all of the foxglove that I've got growing in this drift along Lemon Lane and towards the sidewalk in front of that large boxwood and by the bird bath. So I'm going to be continuing to do that. I will save the seed. I will use my little seed packets. We will put a link below to those seed packets. And it will just make the entire garden look more presentable. And there are other things that will be coming up in their stead. So if the camera got wonky there, it's because Stuart got attacked by a bunch of ants that were just having a party on the redbud tree. So we had to stop there so he could blow them off, shush them off.
There's probably still more, but
yeah, there's probably still more, but you know, that's just what it is to be a man of nature, isn't it? So I'm going to be continuing this in the rest of the garden and all of those aforementioned things that I have planted, including the gorgeous white wedding hydrangeas and all of the other things. There's some more. Okay. Okay, so that is something else that you want to be attentive to do. Cut down your perennials that are past their prime to leave room for the other things that are going to be coming up in their stead. Now I've got one last thing in the back, and then I think we can call it a day. Now another plant that's getting ready to come into its own to replace some things that are past bloom, and that's this whole border of moondance hydrangeas that are blooming in front of these fabulous arborvitae. Now another plant that has already bloomed and is actually already starting to turn brown in the bloom, and that is are these mammoth. Aren't they incredible? Incredible conical shaped Terra hydrangeas. Now I've got a number of them, and you may ask, okay, well, why are they already starting to brown? Well, we've gotten so much rain, so much wind and so much rain that they've kind of been beaten down a bit. But that doesn't disturb me too much, because even though I love how gorgeous they are and striking they are in this white state, I know that I have these moondance hydrangeas and my white wedding hydrangeas coming up in their stead. But the other reason it doesn't bother me too much is they will continue to brown and turn this absolutely wonderful kind of bronzy amber on the stem, and I will cut them and I will bring them inside. And right here, Stuart, we need to insert a picture of the huge bouquet of these that I've got on the dresser in my bedroom, because they are absolutely spectacular. They're long lasting and they're wonderful, not only while they are fresh and in bloom, but also in their dried state. So now let's go to the back, and I'm going to show you my next project and the next thing we need to have on our list. And boy, this needs a little workover. Stuart's
Nice in the shade.
yes, Stuart is giving a sigh of relief that we're in the shade. One thing I really need to address back here, and that is there's just so much debris that has come down off of these red cedar trees. I actually like the way the needles look as kind of a mulch in the flower beds, but they're also all over the brick patio. So I'll get out my works blower and I'll clean that up, because here's another tip. This is what I try to do in the mornings, and that is treat my garden spaces and my living areas kind of like they do at resorts. Now, what do I mean like that? Well, at resorts, they have crews that come out, they dust off all of the cushions, they fluff the pillows, they blow off any debris, they straighten things up. They make sure if anything is toppled over that it's tidied. They will use their little handy blower to clean up anything. They will, I don't know, what else do they do at resorts?
Sure
They'll just make sure that they're freshened up, that the surfaces are wiped clean, and that they look ready for guests. And that is what I try to do each morning. Obviously, I have not yet done it here in the back, but that's a good tip, I think, to try to think of your spaces. Doesn't take any time at all, and it's pleasant work in the morning when you love to be outside like I do, especially in the cool of the day. But I digress. My last thing that really we need to do to get summer ready, and that is to switch out all of our cool season veggies and things. And in my garden, true confessions, these never really took off. And I think it was because at that time of year, these boxes just didn't get enough light. And I think that the planting mix that I put in there was a little bit too heavy. So I'm gonna lighten it up a little bit with some vermiculite and some other things before I plant my summer veggies. Now, here is an indication of our weather recently. I got all sorts of seed from different sources, select seeds, from Sow Right seeds, and because I don't have kind of a seeding mechanism, a seeding setup here, my friend Jen at Bricks was going to seed all of these for me, and they were just big enough for me to be able to plant out. And guess what, Stuart? A huge storm came through, tornadic winds. She had hail damage. She had other kind of catastrophic things that kind of wiped them out. So I went to Bricks and I just got some of these peppers that they had there. I just like the traditional jalapeno peppers. I got some more basil. I got some Thai basil. I got some red ruffle basil. I'm gonna do one of the raised beds, nothing but herbs. I got a spicy globe. I got some thyme to crawl down the edges. I got some more rosemary. I got some sage. And I'll be planting those out along with some of the boxwood basil in front and some other veggies, some tomatoes and things that I will plant when I change out my raised beds, my raised vegetable beds, including that one by the garage window, which leads me to a very, very smug moment where I can say, yes, I have a completely cleaned out garage. That was my project earlier this week. I had somebody help me lift the heavy things, put in the screws into the wall, put in the hanging mechanism for my tools and stuff, and I'm thrilled to have that accomplished. Another summer thing that you might want to cross off of your list. So there you go. I'm just surveying the backyard. I'm going to spend a pleasant rest of the morning here cleaning up back here. I too got some damage on some of my plants. We had hail here at the cottage, and some of the more exposed things like these New Guinea impatiens, they got a little bit beaten up. They've got some holes in their foliage. A lot of the geranium blooms are tired. They need to be deadheaded. They need to be fed again, as do you, Stuart, because you haven't eaten any of that delicious casserole that we made at the beginning of the program. So there you go. There's 5 things that I definitely think you want to have on your list to get ready, set. It's summer, and some of the products that you might need that I definitely recommend to get your best show and live your best life in the garden this summer. You guys take care. Enjoy your Sunday. Be safe this Memorial Day weekend.